computer. Okay, can y'all hear me now?
Yes.
See, it's kind of like the Brady Bunch. We can see everybody. That's what I always think about whenever we do Zoom and we have these little screens pop up. As I always think about the Brady Bunch or Hollywood Squares, where if you can't see everybody, it's not right. So anyhow, so at least we've got everybody now, and I'm sure there'll be others jumping on in a few minutes. Anyhow, want to take a few minutes and just welcome you guys to EDU 486. This is teacher leadership. It really says educational leadership, but I like to refer to it as teacher leadership because that's what we do here. Okay. And one of the things that I think is really, really important as people who are getting into the profession and people who are either already in classrooms or will soon be in classrooms is that we understand the role of the teacher as the leader, whether it's the classroom leader, the school leader, the professional leader, the leader who is, looking at a larger community and, entity and things like this. There are a lot of pieces about leadership that are very important to me. Let me ask you real quick before we go any further. How many of you are already in classrooms? You're already teaching?
I am.
Anybody lateral entry or residency people?
Yes.
Okay. Any NC pre-K folks?
Yep. I am.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let me go ahead and say this to you right now so that you understand where I am about teaching. I retired from Craven County Schools a year ago, July 1st. And I was a teacher. I've been an administrator. I was an assistant principal. I was a principal. I was a district coordinator. My last position I had was special programs coordinator in the exceptional children's department. So I've worked with a lot of people. I've worked in middle schools. I've worked in elementary schools. Years ago, I used to teach for ECU. I was an English teacher for ECU before I got into education. I've taught for North Carolina State University. I taught ethics for school administrators at NC State. So I've been around, and then I got the opportunity to work for UMO, and I've been with UMO for about 7 years now. And, one of the things that I will say is this: you all are at a school that really values lateral entry residency personnel who are getting licensed while jumping into the classroom and trying to stay 2 pages ahead of the kids in the book and trying to keep your head above water. This school really values you. And because we really value you, we want to help you get through this whole licensure thing, okay? And leadership is a key part of that. One of the things you're being asked to do, those of you, anybody in here who is residency or lateral entry? Okay.
Yeah.
Probably when they hired you, I'm gonna pick on you a little bit, Rhett. When they hired you, did they hire you right before school started?
No, they hired me back in May.
Okay. They hired you for back in May for this coming school year?
For starting in August, yeah.
Okay. Well, they pretty much did hire you right when the school year started.
Okay.
Because they threw you into the fire, okay? So we're going to try to help you get ready if we can.
All right, great.
But what happens a lot of times in a lot of school districts is teachers will get hired, and usually it's August. And I'm going to tell you a little story about me. I was one of the very first lateral entry teachers in the state of North Carolina, okay? When I finished college, I went straight to graduate school. I thought I was going to be an English professor. And I got my master's in English at East Carolina. They offered me a temporary job in the English department teaching because nobody wanted to teach the freshmen. And I took the job, and in a year, funding ran out and it was gone. So I said, well, I'll jump over to the community college system. So I jumped over to the community college system for about a year and a half. Okay. And then all of a sudden there was a funding issue again. And so this middle school principal who had been my middle school principal when I was in middle school said, look, I'll give you an 8th grade language arts position if you will take it because I know you need a job. Now, at that time, they weren't hiring that many lateral entry teachers. The only place where many lateral entry teachers were getting jobs were out in the extreme western part of North Carolina in the mountains and way up in the northeastern corner of the state where there just weren't people going because there was no economic support up in the northeastern corner. You know, you're talking about like Warren County, Northampton County, Halifax County, Pasquotank County, places like that. Okay. Well, the thing that was so bad about it was that I thought because I had taught grown-ups, I could teach English. I could teach a bunch of 8th graders how to write. Boy, was I wrong. I was so wrong. I could never been more wrong about anything in my life. And I had to go, you know, and I was taking coursework to get my licensure and everything. And I'm going to tell you something. It takes a special person to know they don't know and jump right in there and go to work. Okay. So that being said, you got a soft spot in my heart already. Okay. But we got a lot of work to do. Now, let me just start by this. Like I said, this classroom is on teacher leadership. And the reason why I think this is an important part of this is because we have never really spent a lot of time on leadership, you know, in this profession, unless they were talking about principals or assistant principals or district office people. Never spent a whole lot of time on leadership, and leadership studies never was very popular outside of the business world and the military until about 25 years ago, when all of a sudden we realized, you know, we're asking people to lead other people. We need to train them so that they're able to lead other people. Okay. So that's what the nature of the beast is going to be for second summer session 2020, is to talk about leadership. Okay. Now I'm going to start with a little story, and I want you all to kind of follow with me. And before we go any further, let me just say one thing before I get into this. Last week, I decided that I didn't think you all wanted to have class right before the 4th of July, because if y'all had been in school all summer long, you probably needed to have a day or two to get your thoughts together. So that's why we waived off class till this week. But don't worry, we're going to get it all done. Okay? But that being said, I want to start with a little story, and I want you to think about this because this is really important. And then I'm going to ask you about what your mindset is about leadership after I ask this question, or after I tell this story. After the meal, he removed his outer garment, picked up a basin of water, tied a towel around his waist, and proceeded to kneel in front of each of the disciples, washing their feet. That was the custom. Now, let me ask a question. Why would I begin a class on leadership by telling a story? First of all, where did that story come from?
Bible.
Bible.
The Bible.
It came from the Bible. Where in particular, Morgan?
I don't know that.
Come on, we're going to find out who slept in Sunday school. Say what?
New Testament.
Last Supper.
It was in the New Testament, you're right, but specifically where?
I don't know that part.
In Luke. It's the last, it's the Passover meal, it's the last
Last
supper that
Supper.
Jesus.
All right, Tracy, good. The Last Supper. Now, let me ask a question when we think about this. How was that a display of leadership?
Because Jesus took on the position of a servant.
Okay, Tracy, you're batting 1,000 tonight. You're just hitting it out of the park here for a minute. Okay, so he took the position of a servant, but a servant's not a leader, is it?
Well, great leaders have the capability to serve.
Yeah, I tell you what, why don't we just quit now for the rest of the semester? I think we got it then. Okay. But now let me ask you this real quick. As a group, what is your concept of leadership? Let's talk about concept of leadership. If you have a concept of leadership, share it with us tonight.
Well, like Jesus, and during that time, he let them know that there was nothing beneath him. There's nothing that he could not do to display his leadership. So if he can do it, we can do it.
Okay, that's a good point. That's a very good point. How many of you, let me ask this real quick, because Donna, you bring up a good point. If he can do it, you can do it. How many of you have ever worked for a school administrator you saw mop a floor or clean a toilet or jump behind the line on the cafeteria line because there was somebody missing that day and we had to serve kids lunch? Anybody ever see that?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Okay. You know, leadership, some people have this concept about leadership is that leadership has got to be, the general standing in front of the troops, and everybody's running across the field to attack somebody. But sometimes the best leaders in your school buildings may not be leaders in title. How many of you who are already working in buildings have met the operational leader of the building? The person who, if you got to get something, that's the person you go to because they know how to do it. They can help you do it. How many of you met that person? Okay, what's that person like? Let's talk about that person's qualifications and capabilities.
Well, in my position would be my director. She's not the owner of the company. She's not the owner of the center, but she's the director and she's the go-to person. So if we need something, I mean, she's just in her office and she's willing to help, whatever. Phone call away.
All right, I certainly understand that because that's one of those things that happens is you have someone who's a functional leader in the building, knows how to get things done. How many of you are teaching in a K-8 situation? Anybody already in a K-8 situation? Okay, Tracy, let me ask you a question. In your what grade are you teaching?
I'm a self-contained EC teacher, K5.
Okay, all right, you got a soft spot in my heart because that's a special place to be.
Yes,
That's a place where people can forget you at sometimes. Well, let me ask you this. That functional leader in that school building, that person, who is that person in your building? Not someone who sits in the office, but who's that person?
It's my EC chairperson.
Okay, well, let me ask you a question. What are some characteristics of this person?
She's approachable, just willing to help out in any way that she can. She's very humble. She's very knowledgeable of the Exceptional Children Program.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Has she ever turned anybody away that you've noticed?
No.
One of the things about it, these functional leaders in our buildings are the kind of people who they're the go-to. And I always used to love this when I was a school principal. I used to try to pair up my rookies and my new teachers, even if if you've been teaching a while, but you were new to the school. I always tried to pair them up with what I call the mother hen in the grade level. And I remember one particular year, first year I was a principal, I took over a school the first week in October, and on day number 5, we flipped the school bus over down Highway 101 between Havelock and Beaufort. That's a good way to meet your parents standing in a ditch full of water. But I'll tell you, it was interesting. But needless to say, I had this one teacher in the 3rd grade, and I still keep up with her, even though I'm retired and she's retired. I still keep up with her. And she was my mother hen. I had a whole building. I had 15 teachers who were less than 27 years old. and I only had a handful of older veterans. And Lisa was my mother hen. And the thing that was so funny about it was that she was one of those people, she spent most of her planning period most of the time, and it wasn't something that I asked her to do, but it was something she did, going room to room checking on all these brand new young teachers. And the funny thing was is that she had just moved down to the coast from Durham County probably 2 years before, so she really hadn't been new to the area. She hadn't really been, you know, in the area for a long time. She was still pretty new herself as far as being there, but she had taught a long time. And it was funny because county realigned my staff, and I ended up losing her to another school. They pulled her and they told me they were going to take her to another school. And I was looking at them on the other end of the line. I was like, come on, guys, you're taking my mother hen. What am I going to do with all these young teachers? And and anyway, but they didn't get it. But then again, most of the time, people who do that, they haven't gotten it anyway. But you know who that person is. And that's part of teacher leadership, where they help to promote the profession. And we're going to talk a little bit about professionalism. Now, as far as things are concerned with this class, I have a few things that we're going to talk about. Number one, I do not open the window for assignments until after we have our Zoom session on Thursday night. And the reason why I don't is because every class I've ever taught for UMO online, there is somebody who thinks they can sit down week one, write every assignment for the whole semester, turn them all in, and not have to do anything the rest of the semester. First of all, I can tell you it'll drive you crazy trying to do that, because if you got families and spouses and church obligations and community obligations and volunteer obligations, not to mention that you got to get everything taken care of for your schoolwork, all those things going on. If you got all that going on, it'll drive you crazy. There's a method to my madness. I do believe that particularly when you are taking coursework in the way we're doing it with online digital access, I think sometimes you just need to have time to sit down and do the work. And, you know, for example, I wait to open the window because, like I said, I don't want you to turn in 15 assignments in the first week and then do nothing the rest of the semester. But at the same time, I also believe that sometimes you don't need to turn an assignment in until we've had a Zoom session, because there may be something that you have a question about, and I'd rather us clear the air before y'all start turning in assignments. So on Thursday evenings, I open the window after our Zoom session, and I leave it open till midnight on Sunday night, because sometimes you just need to have Saturday morning when everybody's still asleep at your house to get your work done. I mean, if you're like me, I have a 7-year-old daughter. She has a red head and an opinion on everything. And trust me, she'll bust in class here before too long. Y'all be sitting here and all of a sudden you'll see this little girl's head stick up over my shoulder probably, and that'll be Avery. That's my little girl. She's in the 2nd grade. And I'm going to tell you, that's why I think teaching is real important. That's why I think it's important that we train as well as we can train now, because, you know, my kid's one of those kids who's going to very well end up with a teacher from UMO. Okay. My kid's one of those kids. As a matter of fact, she's got 2 at her school. Her music teacher is a UMO graduate. The librarian at her school is a UMO graduate. And there's a good chance when she gets to the 2nd grade, her 2nd grade teacher is going to be a UMO graduate, because of the fact that one of them in that grade at Bogue Sound Elementary School in Carteret County is a UMO graduate. I know that. And so that being said, it's a real possibility. So, you know, the point is, it's real important to me that we do the best quality work we can do, because I'm going to tell you something. There are 2 jobs that are the most difficult on the planet. I'm going to tell you what they are today. One of them is teaching other people's children. The other one is being a member of the clergy and trying to make sense of everything that can't be made sense of by most folks. Okay? I'm going to tell you, those are the 2 hardest jobs on the planet, and you got one of them. So we got a lot of work to do. Now, that being said, talking about leadership, we're going to challenge some thoughts about leadership a little bit too while we're doing this. And of course, this week you do have chapter 12 to read, and chapter 12 is on professionalism. Okay, and that's in your textbook, your introduction to education. One of the things I will tell you is this, is that when you buy that book for $4.86, you're going to use that book for $4.85, for $4.87, probably a little bit for $4.84. You're going to be doing a lot of that stuff out of that book. The reason why we did that was we felt like if we offered one textbook that you could use for multiple classes, that saved you from having to buy a bunch of stuff. Okay. Now, that being said, we'll read some things out of the textbook. I'll give you some articles. There's some already on the Moodle for different weeks that you might want to look at, and I'll email stuff to you. And one of the things I tell people is this: when I email articles to you, the best thing you can do, even if you don't need it right then, put a file on your desktop, pull the article right into the file. That's your professional file. You're keeping stuff that you might need. If you don't need it for my class, you may need it for somebody else's. This way it saves you from having to dig into the library every time you got to find something, okay? And I just think that's real important because, you know, I've got files of articles that I keep all the time, and I'm always updating them because of one particular reason, and that is I want to make sure that if somebody asks me for something, I can help them by sending them something. Okay. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about assignments. Like I said, assignments are due by midnight on Sunday night. Now, I will tell you, I employ what I call a coaching model. Okay. First of all, I'm going to tell you right now, I do not have a preset idea that 3 of you will get A's, 6 of you will get B's, and the rest of you will get C's, D's, and F's. I don't do that. Okay. You walked in here tonight, you got an A so far. Your job's to keep the A. All right. Because as far as grades are concerned with me, you know, I'm not as hung up on grades as I am on you learning the material and mastering the skill. Okay. That's important to me, is the mastery of the skill. Okay. There are a lot of people who have put a lot of stock in grades, and they get very disappointed when they don't get the perfect grade or this, that, and the other. Like I said, if you start and you get better over the period, over the time we're together, your grade's going to reflect that you improved, that you got better. Okay. Now, I will tell you, there's some things in there that if you just, that the only way to mess them up is to just not do them. If you don't do the forums, you don't get credit for them. If you do the forums, you get credit for them. Okay. Who's who in American education? There's a who's who thing on there, assignment at week number 5. The only way to mess it up is to not do it. I mean, it's not that hard. Did not do it. I mean, so like I said, you know, you got a chance to get some things pretty simply without having to worry about them. Okay. But I will say this, and I want you to think about this a little bit while I'm talking about this. Like I said, I mentioned to you that, you know, I know you have lives and you have families and you have obligations and church obligations and civic obligations and all the things going on. Okay. One of the things I think is real important is if something's going on and we got a problem, you know, you have a family issue, heaven forbid somebody gets COVID-19 and you've got to, you know, put somebody in the hospital, or heck, you test positive and you got to quarantine yourself for 2 weeks or whatever. Let me just explain. Let me know what's going on and I will work with you. Okay. All right. But now let me say this, because I've run in this before, and I'll just tell you a little story. When I taught at ECU, I had this guy in my class, and he was 19 years old. He was away from home for the first time, and this kid, grandma died about every other week the whole semester. Well, I want to know how many times his parents were married, because, I mean, you can't have that many grandparents. I mean, and finally I just told him, I said, you know, you might want to drop the class because I don't think you're going to make it. But like I said, I understand things happen, you know. But grandma, I'm not joking, grandma died 9 times that semester. And so that being said, I want to make sure that you understand, if you tell me what's going on, we'll work out a schedule to get your stuff done, okay? If you tell me what's going on. But I can't read your mind, so please, you know, please help me out a little bit. But the other part of it is this too. Don't play me for a fool. Okay. I think I've heard every excuse someone can give twice. This COVID-19 thing is brand new. I can't do much with that because like I said, everybody's in uncharted territory on this one. But stuff is going to happen, and we got to make sure that we can get you through. Okay. I want to make sure that when you're finished on August 23rd, that you're completed with this class and you're ready to go. How many of you, this is the last thing you have on your schedule before you have to start thinking about the licensure exam and applying for licensure? Okay.
Me.
All right. Okay. And that's a good, the thing is, that's a good place to be. But, we're going to be working on some things with the university, and I'll share more of that as we go through. But I also want you to think about this too. Now, your first assignment on Sunday night, let me talk to you a little bit about that. Okay. When we finish, I send out a copy of the recording. I send out the link so you can pull up the recording from our Zoom session every week. Okay. You'll get that in an email, usually by 9:30, 10 o'clock, the night of our Zoom session. Okay. And it kind of will go over what we talked about. It'll also go over what assignments are due. In other words, I'm going to make sure that from me what's got to be done. Now, Sunday night by midnight, what I want you to do is I want you to go into the North Carolina Teacher Working and Learning Conditions Survey for 2018. 2020 didn't happen because of the having to shut schools down before everybody had a chance to do it and they had a chance to compile everything. But 2018 is there, and I want you to use the 2018 data, and I want you to pick a public school in your community. If you're working in a school, use that school. If you're not working in a public school, if you're working in a pre-K environment, with a NC pre-K program that's not connected to a school, pick a school. And it might be in your community. It might be a school where your children go to school. It might be the school in your neighborhood, but pick a school in there. What you do is you go to NorthCarolinaTeachingWorkingConditions.org, and anyway, you can pick up all 115 school districts in North Carolina. And when you click on the district, it gives a list of all the schools. You click on the schools, and it gives the data for what the teachers said about working in that school. They do it every 2 years. And the reason why they do it every 2 years is because they wouldn't be able to compile the data every single year because it's an awful lot. But what I want you to do is I want you to look at the school that you choose, look at the data. I want you to look at any areas that are below 70%, because those are areas that need to be addressed probably at that school level, okay? I want you to look at and be able to get an idea about what the teachers think about working in that particular school. Now, there's a reason why I want you to do this, and it's not just because Gainey wants to give you some assignment to make you mad all weekend long, okay? I think it's really important that people have a good idea about what the perception of a school is based on what the people who work there say about it, okay? How many of you have ever walked into school in the first 10 minutes you knew what they were all about when you walked in the front door, okay? Let me ask somebody who said that. Rhett, what gives you the idea of how the school is? Tell me what you notice when you walk in the school building.
Well, it can go either way. Somebody greets you. I mean, if it's the first time you've been in a school, you don't know where you're going. You're trying to find the principal. You're trying to find the gym. Hey, can I help you with something? It's a random teacher or maybe a student, which sends a great message. Or you're walking around for 10 minutes. You've passed 100 people. Nobody says anything to you. Kind of like church, It's the same thing in church. You walk in there and somebody greets you, you feel pretty good about it. If not, and nobody talks to you the whole sermon, you walk out, you never talk to anybody, you kind of wonder what's going on. So,
okay, that's a good point and a good comparison to make. I think it's funny because one of the things that I did while I was still working in the public schools was I was on accreditation teams that had to go into other school districts, into schools when it was time for them to be accredited. And one of the things that was really funny, I remember the last one I went to was a little school down in Robeson County called Union Elementary School, and it was way out in the country. And most of the kids at that school, matter of fact, all of them were Lumbee Indian children. And, you know, there was not a whole lot of different representation of different ethnicities and so forth, because it was a school that was, you know, a public school in Robinson County, but it was also a school that was supported by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And one of the things I thought was really interesting was the fact that everybody in that school, I mean, I'd never been in a friendlier school in my life. They were glad that you were there. They wanted to talk to you. And the thing I think about is this: when you talk about a school, we had a meeting with parents and community leaders at the end of the first day when we were there doing the evaluation. And we asked them, said, well, you know, tell us what's good about the school. And they did that. Tell us what you like about it. Tell us about the community, so forth and so on. And the last question we asked them was, can you tell us what you think needs to be improved or fixed at this school? And this lady raised her hand and she said, well, I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but when we have awards night at the end of the year, that gym was built in 1950 and there's no air conditioning in there. And by the time we get to the end of the school year, it's kind of warm in there when we all get in there for awards night. And I thought to myself, if that's all you have to complain about, this is a pretty good school. It may not show it in the numbers, but it's a good school. It's a good community-centered school. And I'm going to tell you something. We loved that place. When we were there, they still cooked in their cafeteria. I mean, it wasn't warming up no square pizza or anything like that. They were cooking meals. I mean, they kept saying, well, we'll send out for lunch. It's like, no, we want to eat in the cafeteria. That's where the good food is. I mean, you know, I was like sitting down at grandma's. I mean, it was good food, you know. But the one thing about it was that the environment was such a strong, positive environment, even though they were kids who, you know, were kind of not like the typical run-of-the-mill kids you would find anywhere else in North Carolina. The thing that was so funny was that school was the hub of that community. They sponsored the Little League. They sponsored the Pop Warner football. They did the girls softball. At that time, they sponsored scouting. They did all kinds of stuff in that school. They took care of a lot of stuff. And I mean, they always had someone out there volunteering on the flower beds or something. I mean, it was great. I mean, it's just a great little community. But the thing that was so funny about it was if you looked at their numbers strictly by their numbers, which is what we do a lot of times, you would be told that was not a good school. The first thing the principal told us is she said, look, she said, we have a 250-year-old literacy problem in this school. She said, these kids are Lumbee Indian kids. They've not had the exposure to literacy that most other children have had in North Carolina. And she said, you know, we know that and we're addressing that. And we can admit that that's one of our problems that we've got to address. I mean, nothing said leadership to me more than that. Hey, we know we got a problem and we're addressing it, but we haven't gotten there yet, you know. And that was one of the things to me I looked at and I said, you know, that's what teacher leadership's about. And every one of those teachers, they all taught reading at some point in time in the day. If they were math teachers, they were teaching reading at some point in time in the day. If they were science teachers, they were teaching reading at some point in time in the day. Everybody was on that thing about literacy. They were going to get that literacy problem beaten. And they were working on it together. So that was solid. That was really solid leadership. But that's one of the things I want you to think about when you do this working and learning conditions survey, when you start looking and reflecting on the data. Like I said, if it's something that is below 70% that the teachers have marked, that's an area you're probably going to want to bring up, you know. But one of the things I will tell you is that looking at data, understanding data, there's a method to the madness. I want you to be able to do it because when you get ready to take the PPAT to get licensed, one of the things you're going to have to do is in that first task, you're going to have to point out the school community demographics and the makeup of that school community and that school population and how that impacts learning for students and how that impacts teaching for teachers. So that being said, it's really important. And there's another reason why I want you to do this too. The other reason is this. You know, when you go to a job interview, you're going to a job interview and they're determining whether or not they think you're a good fit for them. All right. And one of the things about it is when you start learning to look at data on schools and you go to a job interview, you're going to be able to determine whether they're a good fit for you. Because I do truly believe that people do their best work in education when they feel like they are a part of what's going on. I think they do their best work. I think the kids get the most out of it. I think the job satisfaction is the best. I mean, let's face it, it's a tiring job. You're going to be tired in this profession. But you can learn an awful lot. And if you feel happy in what you're doing, if the climate of the school and the environment of the school and the capacity for growth is there, as far as you as a student and you as a teacher, then you're going to have a much better time working in that profession. And that's really important. Now, we got a few minutes, and I feel like I kind of rambled a little bit tonight, but I wanted to kind of cover a few things. Is there anything anybody needs to ask?
I do.
Okay, Lilia.
For week 2, I
Uh-huh.
went on the link that's up there that you said we have to get on. When I
Uh-huh.
looked up there, I didn't see where the survey was. So is there another link that we have to get on?
What I'm going to do is I'm going to send you the link to it in the email tonight.
Okay.
And it's real easy. It's lowercase ncteachingconditions.org. It's done through the state every other year. But I'm going to send you the link when I send you the video from tonight, because every time we have a Zoom session, I'm going to send you the video. Okay.
Okay.
And the reason why I'm going to do that is because I know sometimes we're talking about things and we're flying along, and 30 minutes later, you forget something, you can't remember what was said. In this way, at least you can just pull it up and watch it. And I will tell you, most of the time, our Zoom sessions are not going to last more than about 45 minutes, because I want to make sure that I can record them and get them to you. And I have a limit on how much space I can put on one. But I will say this to you. If you ever have a problem and need to get up with me, Delicia, you've been in class with me before, so you know this. My phone number is always on every email. I don't mind if you call me. It won't bother me if you call me, okay? I try to answer my emails at least once or twice a day. It will not bother me if you call me or you shoot me an email. Now, let me clarify that. If you call me after 9:30 and you wake my little girl up, it'll bother me, okay? If you call me at 11 o'clock on Sunday morning, it's going to bother me, okay? Because that means it's going to be ringing at church, and my wife's going to give me that dirty look in the pew, and I really don't want that dirty look in the pew, okay? So that being said, any other time's fine, all right? Any other time is fine. And like I said, I'll be more than happy to try to help you guys out. Now, we got a lot to do. And between now and August 23rd, we got a lot to do, but we can get it done, okay? And believe me, I'd like to know when everybody heads back to school that we've got this closed up. And like I said, I get really ill when people start worrying about grades. Grades will take care of themselves, okay? I'm a big fan of grades taking care of themselves. If you do what you're supposed to do the way you're supposed to do it, grades will not be an issue to you. Now, if you call me the week before the semester ends and you want to turn in 7 assignments because you didn't do it, you might be a little worried about your grade, okay? Like I said, one of the things I do is a growth model, okay? I feel like that's important. I do a lot of coaching, and the reason why I do a lot of coaching is because I don't expect everybody to be perfect, okay? And it takes a little while to get into the swing of doing things, okay? So I would rather see you make an effort to do it the right way and ask questions than to blow it off, and then all of a sudden at the end you're wanting an extension and this, that, and the other. I think I've given an incomplete maybe twice the whole time I've worked for UMO, because most students will want to jump on in and get it done because they don't want it hanging over their heads. And trust me, it will not be as painful as you think it is. If you break it down in chunks and you do it one assignment at a time. Delicia, you've been in my class. You can tell them that's kind of the thing. If you do it in chunks, you're going to be happier You're going to be sane. You're going to sleep at night, and everything will be okay. All right. Because I will say this, my big thing right now is let's master the material, let's be healthy, and let's stay sane. Okay. That's my big thing in that order. Now, anybody have anything else before we close for the night? Because I got about 2 minutes to close out. Yes, Red.
I went to that website, North Carolina Teaching Conditions.org, and I don't know if it's just me. It's not letting me on, but I know you said you were going to send us the link, so hopefully that kind of.
Let me ask you a question. Does it say that little thing about unsafe to proceed? It's unsafe.
Yeah, your connection is not private, unsafe.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad you went ahead and did that. Let me clear something up for you. The state of North Carolina did this. The reason why it's popping up like that is because of the UMO filter. Don't worry about it. Just go ahead and proceed to it. You should be okay. It's safe. Trust me, it's safe.
Okay.
Okay. Now, if your computer blows up, I didn't have nothing to do with that. Okay. All right. Anyway, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to close. I'm going to send you an email tonight, probably within the next 30 or 40 minutes. The email with the access for the video will be on there. And also I will send the link to you as well. Okay. All right. So like I said, Sunday night by midnight, do your thing for your school on the teacher working and learning conditions survey. You should be fine. I think it'll be, when you dig in, like I said, the one thing I want you to do is I want you to look at what the teachers said about that particular school and working there. And then figure out, you know, one of the biggest issues I'll just say in a leadership perspective is that it is the job of people in an organization to figure out what doesn't work. Okay. And then the job of people in an organization to figure out what doesn't work. It's also their job to come up with solutions as to how to make things go better. So that being said, you know, when you start looking at it, you start seeing some of these areas that are low, you're definitely going to want to mention them, you know, and because that's part of being able to take apart data. Now, I'm going to go ahead and close. I will send you the email probably in about 30 or 40 minutes when the video finishes downloading. Okay.
Okay.
You guys have a good evening, and y'all take care. Be safe.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.